Chico and the Man will not be presented this evening, and the Rockford Files will be seen 1 hour later than normal, so that we may bring you the following special program.
Word Balloon is brought to you by the League of Word Balloon Listeners.
That's, me kind of doing a very light take on the version of Batman I was raised by, which is sort of post-Neil Adams take, which he was doing the year I was born. Neil Adams was redefining the character kind of in the cracks and corners of DC when he was first a cover artist on a lot of the Batman books in the late 60s, and then once they gave him sort of the run of the place, his look, he kind of exaggerated even more with the lighting and the grandeur, the way he would exaggerate the figure form, the length of the ears, the length of the cape. A lot of it was just sort of aesthetics. He wasn't really changing the costume per se. I tried to illustrate what Adams did with a sense of maybe somewhat photo exacting kind of take on it, while also kind of avoiding some of the comic book tropes of the glowing white eyes, which I was always having a problem with as a kid, thinking about like how the mask is pretty much on his face like it's makeup. Like it's as close to the skin as you can get the way it was drawn by everybody, Adams included. And if that's the case, there's no room to hide the eyelashes for the human being wearing this mask, so basically just his natural eyes showing, but you can hide that in shadow.
Welcome back, everybody. Time again for Word Balloon, the comic book conversation show. John Suntress here. Well, it's always a pleasure to welcome Uncle Sal back to Word Balloon. I don't call him Uncle Sal, the others do. But Sal Abbinanti, one of my best friends in comics, the alderman of comic books.
Oh, yes. I remember that name. It's a compliment when you're from Chicago. So
it absolutely is, man.
Yeah, usually means you're a tremendous pain in the ass.
No, it means you cut through the BS and you tell it like it is,
right?
And you're not afraid to speak truth to power.
You grift a little bit, It's just the two of us, okay? Because sometimes, a lot of times when I watch your show, it's like Hollywood Squares. You got like 14, screens up there, and you guys are arguing, over.
Star Trek.
Yeah, something. You guys are always pissed off about something or somebody.
I'm always pissed off.
Franco's always mad about something, and then and you've got about 4 or 5 other guys that I recognize, but I don't really know where I know them from. I probably saw them at a buffet, at Fan Expo in Chicago, but I don't really recognize them. And then there's Art and the usual cast of characters.
So. That's true, and we do. We do have as many as. Five boxes up and stuff. It is like Hollywood Squares. You're absolutely right.
No, it's good. You guys are passionate about that stuff.
Very true.
When you get a Starsky and Hutch reunion, call me.
Don't kid yourself. I would love for that. Who's left? I guess Glacier and David Soul are still around.
It's kind of scary. I think I saw David Soul. I think he's got a walker now. So
for real?
I don't know. He hurt himself or something, but I saw it's not pretty. And I saw how they did a reunion. I want to say 5 before COVID, and it was not pretty. It was, but hey,
Paul,
it was the 70s. What are you gonna do?
Paul Michael Glaser, he was on that Grace and Frankie show with Lily Tomlin and Jane Fonda.
Okay.
And I gotta say, for 70 whatever, he looked pretty goddamn good.
He pops out. He was in that Diane Keaton movie with Keanu Reeves and Jack Nicholson. He played her ex-husband. He's in it for like 5 seconds. He's got like 5 pages. So he got like 5 lines.
He's in my favorite Houdini movie. Remember that from
yeah. Okay. Yeah,
sure. Brad Meltzer, one of his decodeds where he's trying to unlock the mysteries of various things.
Yes.
And he's a big Houdini guy. and he had never seen it. And I'm like, dude, Paul Michael Glaser, Sally Struthers as the wife, and Vivian Vance.
Vivian Vance. That's right.
As her best friend.
That's
and
right.
kind of the narrator of the movie. Oh, I love that movie.
I was a big Tony Curtis Houdini guy. You know, the Tony Curtis movie. Growing up, Tony Curtis was like,
kind of full of shit. Kind of a full of shit because he supposedly dies from the underwater
punch in the stomach. Yeah.
Well, the punch in the stomach and the underwater the underwater trick in the glass booth.
Yeah. Good movie though. When I was a kid, they turned him into a superhero, so it was cool.
One of the best. Yeah. One of the absolute best. All right, they're all coming out of the woodwork, so to say hello.
What are the guys I owe money? Or the other
it's Franco and Mitch and Wayne.
I just saw Wayne in New York, and Wayne's good. I hope he's doing good. He was under the weather a little bit in New York. I hope he's feeling better.
Yeah, he said I saw him last night. He did the Trek show with me last night, and said he caught a bug, but it wasn't COVID. Thankfully, everybody got COVID. How did you survive, Sal?
What kills me about cons is that everybody that comes from cons now says, "Oh, I must have COVID. I feel like shit." It's like, well, I've been feeling like shit after cons for 25 years, so I don't know, because you get your ass kicked at these things anyway. And I went and got my shots. I don't know if it mattered or not, but I feel like shit at the end of cons. So but I always say hot pastrami at Cats at the end of the show kills anything. So that's the way I keep safe in New York.
Now I know Carnegie is down, but is Ben Ash, which used to be across the street from Carnegie, is that still there?
There are, in my mind, the best ones are gone. I mean, Cats is still the greatest in my mind. You can't. I'm sorry. No offense to Chicago. We don't have great deli. New York has great deli. Chicago's got good deli.
Exactly.
Second Avenue deli's gone. Carnegie's gone. Stage is gone, and Cats is the only one that's worth your time. But New York is kind of, every other decade, in my opinion, New York is always on the down. And then it's resilient. It comes back. Like in the 70s, you remember New York was the dead city when Ford said, drop dead. He wasn't going to get many money. And then in the 80s, it came roaring back. In the 90s, we had 9/11 and it came roaring back. And then COVID, everybody was going to move out. Nobody cared. It was a dead city. It was empty. And it came back. Now it's back. But John, I've been going there for 25 years doing shows. It's crazy, man. It is a different city now. It's the post-COVID world. The traffic is unlike I've ever seen. Lots of empty stores, lots of COVID casualties from, empty storefronts.
Oh, yeah.
The rats, always seen rats. Not like this. I mean, I went out to dinner Thursday night, Friday night. I had a pain in the ass client. I had to take to dinner. So we went up. I like Avra up on 48th and Lex. You'd love it. It's Mediterranean.
Oh, great.
They got the hummus and the olives and the feta and the homogilla. So it's a nice night. And I love walking New York. New York's the greatest walking city, in the world. Like, you feel like Frank Sinatra. You're walking around.
100%.
Yeah. So I'm walking back. And I'm tricky tracking back to my hotel. My hotel's over in Hudson Yards, right by the Javits.
Yeah.
So 10th and 34th, over there. So I'm cutting back. I'm at 48th and so I don't give a shit. I'm walking back. I don't care.
Okay.
And I'm not worried about. I'm not like Bruce Wayne. I'm gonna get murdered with my parents, and
understand.
Be left on the street by the Joker. So I cut up about 8th Avenue, John. And about, 43rd, 44th, right over by the there's a church, and then there's like a food pantry next to it where they feed, whoever wants to come in and get meal. And there's garbage, about 2 stories high stacked out in front, John. So I'm cutting up, the East and West Street. And John, I swear to God, out of the corner of my eye, it looked like the ground was moving. And then it looked like somebody was dragging like gray, bolts of carpet across the ground. What it was just swarms, and I mean schools of rats running from underneath the garbage of what they put out at the food pantry. I'm talking hundreds of them. I'm not talking about your occasional, hey, how you doing kind of rat running. And I thought it's fucking doomsday, John. I thought this is like the boom tube opened and Darkseid's coming out and the rats were running because they were scared. It was like some shit out of The Exorcist is what. And I walked right in the middle of the street, John. I said, no, I don't want any of this. I said, you guys got this. And I was never so happy to see Ninth Avenue in all my life. I got up to Ninth Avenue and I was like, oh my God, there's civilization and there's cars. And what happened was, from all the flooding, the sewers got flooded. All the rats were coming up because the streets were flooded.
Sure.
I had no idea. But I'm telling you, man, I normally on Fox News and all that, they always like to bash New York, to show videos from 20 years ago about, how bad it is in New York City. But it's still the greatest in my mind, but it's definitely, it's going through some adversity, shall we say, right
well,
now.
Downtown Chicago is going through a little bit.
Downtown Chicago is like Escape from New York. Yeah, it's a John Carpenter movie. I tell people, I mean, it's like Isaac Hayes runs downtown Chicago with the Cadillac, with the chandelier, with the
absolutely.
Chandelier.
I was thinking of the Warriors. Can you dig it?
Actually, set up next to us across the way was John Carpenter at New York. And I got a chance to chat with him a little bit. Super nice guy. Really old, but really nice guy.
I've met Sandy. I've met his wife, and I know she's very involved in the publishing end of their company.
That's kind of what it was. They're promoting. I think they're doing some books or some comics based on some creator-owned stuff of his. But super nice guy. I mean,
that's great.
Talked to him about The Thing a little bit, and I told him how much I loved, Christine and The Fog.
I remember, I think the last time I was in New York, I think it was in 2018. Barry Levinson was very quietly incognito walking around the convention.
Yeah.
Brian Haberlin had that virtual reality comic that he made.
Sure.
And his booth and everything. And that's where I met Barry. And yeah, it was really cool seeing Barry there. Yeah. Geez, Sal, I'll tell you, I used to love to go to the New York Comic Con. I loved when the Artist Alley was set up in the North Wing.
Yeah.
Natural light, big, airy space.
Yeah.
It was great. You tolerated the shuffling through the main hallways. I would say it looked like a Metropolis when the workers are going to work and they're all
yeah.
But I got to be honest, man. No, I in the last couple of years, and I don't miss not going because or however that double negative works out. But yeah, I don't know.
Well, I gotta say, it's like I said, I've been setting up there as an exhibitor and as an Artist Alley. I started going in Artist Alley 25 years ago when they first started it. And I've always said I love New York, but I hate the Javits. And the Javits is like having a con at Senn High School. I mean, it's just 10 pounds of shit in a 5-pound bag. There's too many people. Now, that being said, Hudson Yards has got developed, so at least you got hotels close by.
Yes.
But New York is kind of a rigged poker game when it comes to how expensive it is.
Yeah.
New York for us is 3 times as expensive as San Diego because you've got hotels, you've got cabs, you've got staff, you've got the unions, and you've got Reed. Now, I used to know a lot of guys at Reed, and I still got Mike Negan is a good friend of ours.
Great friend of ours.
I love Mike, but Reed can be difficult. Reed doesn't necessarily like to work with a lot of the creators and a lot of the exhibitors as well as other shows do, because Reed is more of a trade show business than they are one for that. So we haven't had a lot of, like this year, there was a lot of mistakes. I mean, like Tom Hardy was right behind us. I got a chance to meet Tom Hardy. Super nice guy. He's there with his own creator-owned stuff. His booth was in the weeds. I mean, they almost like took his money and they went, and he didn't have a great location. And New York is all about location. And the post-COVID world for shows is much different now, John. I mean, New York, anybody who was there could tell you it's 2/3 manga now. There was no Image, there was no Skybound, there was no DC, there was no, no Dark Horse, there was no big publishers there. I mean, Marvel had their stage, but New York is used to be the center of the comic universe, and same with Artist Alley. I feel that they're kind of pushed off to the lower area where they were in years past. It used to be on the main floor. And I just feel they're not honoring this fantastic legacy that comic books have in the city of New York. I mean, New York, even in the comics, everything happened in New York, but yet it doesn't feel that way now. So it was crowded. I mean, it definitely felt like it was really 100% back. Last year, we were at about 75% because people were still a little gun shy coming out of COVID. This year was a shitstorm. I mean, it was crowded. It was busy. Thursday night, opening night was jammed. The weekend was jammed. So, that's good, but it just feels different, John.
That worries me. I mean, honestly, I wonder what is in the publishers' minds. I don't know how much it costs to put up, a nice booth and everything as the shows, the publishers normally do.
Well, trade shows, I mean, historically, trade shows are always the bean counters don't like trade shows because they don't feel that it's kind of a cost-effective way of promoting your product. They think now they're tremendously expensive, and I think a lot of companies over COVID realized when we had to pivot into our own marketing, into our own, bang the drum, realized, hey, maybe we don't need to do these things. Maybe we could put that money into self-promotion. Maybe we could put that money into social media or into, other things. And I get that because I'm telling you, New York for us is a break-even proposition because it's so expensive, but it's good for your branding. It's good for your face-to-faces. It's important to meet your clients and cultivate new clients. You come out of there with some new relationships and stuff like that you can't fake through emails and through other stuff. But, then when you factor in you're working for free, it's a kick in the ass, that show. Now, will I be back next year? Yeah. But you have to kind of reassess. Everybody, I think, is going to have to reassess how we're going to approach the post-COVID world now that we're all back in terms of how you're going to market and how you're going to promote, your products.
Well, Mitch makes a good point. The old school marketing was if you weren't there, you were out of business.
Yeah.
So I understand. There you go. Chad says one thing I missed about not making New York Comic Con was catching up with Uncle Sal. Very nice, Chad.
Well, that's nice. They used to. I like when people come up and break my balls. It's important to because again, like I said, it's important to see people face to face. And the guys, oftentimes you don't get to see people other than a couple times a year. San Diego's hard because San Diego's like an airport. It's tough to talk to people at San Diego because everybody's running in a million. New York is nice because it's not as much of a destination show as San Diego is. A lot of people live there. They're there just, they come for the day, they go home.
Sure.
At the end of the day, they catch the the 5:40 train and they're out of there.
Yeah.
And it's not in February anymore. It's cool that it's this time of year, and but it's expensive, John. I mean, it's a very expensive show. And if you're not if you don't mind, you don't have a way to create product and create show exclusives and things to help you get through, you're going to get your ass handed to you because it's an expensive show.
Well, and it's as Mitch said about old marketing and stuff. You've got, I think, also with the limited space of Artist Alley and stuff, you kind of have to show a reason of being there and something new and something flashy. In your case, now you got the great booths that you do both in San Diego and New York. And New York's, in my experience, seeing your booth in New York, slightly smaller than San Diego. Do you have fresh Alex covers of more recent, like the Marvel stuff he's been doing lately and things?
Yeah, well, it's a different. Again, it's apples and oranges. You can't just take San Diego and put it at New York, because it's a different dynamic. So we do more licensed product at New York. We do more show exclusives. A lot of people used to treat New York as whatever you had left over from San Diego, you rolled it into New York, and that's
Yeah.
rid of it. No, not anymore, because New York is it's too important to do that now. And show exclusives are too big a part of your bottom line to get you off the schneid, so to speak, to get your expenses paid for, that you have to kind of respect New York enough to do a New York exclusive and not just try to peddle off, oh, this is shit left over, because the stench of what's left over, people read it, they see it, they smell that, and that's not good, because you don't want to give them the feeling that they're just buying what you couldn't sell at New York. Now, for a lot of guys, that's not always easy, especially guys that come from Europe. A lot of the European talent that you see in Artist Alley at New York, because it's expensive to ship sketchbooks and stuff. And by the time you pay for all that, you break even. You lose your ass on shipping. Well, with us, we ship out crate. Now, we don't do the helicarrier double decker at New York, because the unions forget about it. I mean,
okay, sure.
It's like a Clint Eastwood movie. It's extortion how expensive the unions are in New York. But we also got Bill there. Bill Sienkiewicz is
I was going to say, yes.
Yeah, and he's signing, and he's doing more of an appearance at New York, and they love him. They come out to see him. So we got Bill there, and then we got Alex's stuff, because Alex doesn't go to New York. And so it works. It's a different vibe, because people love to come and see Bill. And it could be a little bit like Studio 54 at times, where there's just a shitload of people. But I've been on the other side, John. I've been in the weeds, where you sit there all day and nobody comes to your booth, and it's no fun. So I don't mind getting my ass kicked. If I'm going to be there for 5 days or whatever it is, a week, I'd rather get my ass kicked than stand around, playing pocket pool. That's my father used to say.
You got Luca coming up next month?
I leave for Luca on Saturday.
Wow.
Yeah. So Luca, I haven't been to Luca in 4 years.
I was going to say, I'm really interested to hear how, and then certainly, man, Italy got its ass handed to them during COVID. It was rough, man. Yeah. So no, I'm really interested to hear when you come back.
They told me I know. I looked at the map today. They moved everything around. It'll be the usual collection of European artists, and there's a lot of European publishers, because comics are huge in Spain and Italy and France and all that. And I started doing Luca, God help me, 20 years ago, and then pre-COVID, like you said, Italy got their ass thoroughly kicked during COVID, and when you add since the last one to now, it's been 4 years since.
Wow.
So it'll be interesting. They told me they're sold out. 175, 200,000 people tickets sold, and then there's another 75 or whatever kids that just show up that don't have tickets. So it's a massive undertaking of like a humanity. It's like an art festival, which is good, but it's bad because it rains every day, and you're intense outside.
That's what I was going to ask, man. Yeah, it's like Angoulême, that it's an outdoor festival.
It's not as cold, but it rains every day, and you're outside, so it turns into Kelly's Heroes real quick.
Sure.
And I'm not 3x7 anymore. So sitting in a tent all day drawing Boba Fett, because I do sketches and I do whatever people want. And all day I ask, why isn't Alex here? But I like to do sketches for people, and I love Luca because of the food and the people and the wine, but it's a kick in the ass.
No, I understand, man. I'm looking. Okay, no, not yet. I'm gonna have to find for my there you go. Mitch says it's rat free. I wanted to put up, and I'll put up a bigger version of it, but I know for the lobby card, you can see in the lower left-hand corner right under your face one of your fantastic sketches, this of the Punisher. I don't know how old it was, but honest, Sal, I swear to you, I was talking to some art people last week, and I said, I love the way Sal sketches. I particularly love his choices of color and the way, here's a page, I believe, from The Hostage, and it's just your color choices and your style of art and everything. It is compelling. and it is unique. And I don't use those words and it's great. I mean, I don't want you to think I'm using the
No. I mean, it's why
but
I
I
got
love
into
your style.
business. I mean, it's why I got into business, and I still do it every day. I mean, I have a studio, and I'm working on my next project every day. It's not, I got into business to be a comic artist, and it didn't work out that way. Walking in the front door, but I'm perfectly cool with the way things turned out. I run the business with Alex and Bill Sienkiewicz. So it worked out fine. It allows me to do my own thing. My style's not for everybody because I wanted to growing up. I grew up with American comics. That's what I wanted to do. It didn't work out that way. But at Luca, it's great because I'm bringing I brought Cases of the Hostage and Atomica. So I got Alex there and Bill there. And then I got my own little section there and in the European shows, you're expected to do sketches. And a lot of artists, they're not big on that, or they want to charge. Me, I don't care. If you buy the book, I'll do you a sketch. So
awesome.
I enjoy it. I mean, I'm like, anytime I could sit and draw for people, I feel, blessed to be able to do that. I don't have a problem with it. I mean, granted, I'm not one of those guys that they're going to throw it on eBay anyway, but that's okay. I'm cool with it, and it allows me to pass the time because it's a long show. It's 5 days.
Sure.
It goes till 8:00 every night. So, your ass is dragging it by 9:00. And
do they do panels? Do you participate in any?
I haven't been asked to be on panel. They have a lot of panels there. It's mostly Italian speaking panels. And if they ask me, I will, but the Italian show organizers oftentimes don't get around to the American artists or the American exhibitors as quickly as they do. Like, if you're Jim Lee or Frank Miller, who's going to be there in CB, those guys do that. They want those guys. Me, they want to ask where's Alex?
And I understand that too. Here's a better, more.
That's an old one. Yeah,
I know, but I love it, man. And again, here Frank Castle for the audio audience. Just look up Sal's art, everybody, and that is listening.
Yeah, I'm on Instagram or Mercury Comics.
Yes,
really mine. Mercury Comics on Instagram and on Twitter, and I still do my thing. But thanks. I appreciate it, John. It's really what it's what I do. But yet, I run the business. I started working with Alex 25 years ago. And I didn't know it was. I told him I'd help him out for a couple of years, and that was 25 years ago. So it turned out to be like Ringo. I mean, he didn't join the Beatles expecting it to turn into what it did. But hey, what are you going to do?
I think that's great. Are you taking Alex's art, and are there museum stops coming up in 24?
Yeah, we're doing the Marvelocity exhibition is traveling now. It's going to be, I think it's right now it's in Shenandoah Valley, and it was just here at Elmhurst, and it was at the Dunn Museum. So it's going to be traveling around for 5 years. We're working on another one. We're trying to pull it together of all the mural pieces and stuff like that. That's a little bit harder because it's a bigger show, but we're trying to pull it together now. I'll when I know something more definitively, that's a much more ambitious show. But yeah, and then with Luca, I have a lot of Bill Sienkiewicz originals, a lot of Alex Ross originals, and then my stuff. So and it's a different feel, it's a different vibe, John. I mean, there really is an art festival when you go. No offense to the American shows, but a lot of the American shows have become kind of formula. It's a formula, of Funko dolls and cosplay, and then the guy from Planet of the Apes and the gal from Firefly and all the cosplay.
Yeah, that's what I've noticed is the Hollywood autograph.
The Hollywood autograph, it's become and those shows are become very similar, and I think a lot of artist alleys are paying the price. They're getting kind of closed in on, and there's the same amount. The pizza's the same size, but the pieces are getting smaller because they're having to compete with more of that stuff. And the younger audience, like my kids and teenagers, they're gonna go get the guy from Walking Dead, a photo with him, or a photo with the guy from whatever the flavor of the month show is. And a lot of the artists are getting kind of tossed aside because of that.
Yeah,
Luca's different. Luca's a lot of independent publishers, and people really, really like to watch the artists draw. It's a different vibe.
I can appreciate that. I gotta say though, as you know, these shows are so Hollywood oriented, I can't help but notice, at least for me, and I think a lot of us hardcore nerds, and certainly it's being shown in the ratings and the box office. As you said, it's you were talking about conventions, but I would say a lot of the Hollywood output has become very boring and not innovative. And I'll tell you, I was talking about it last night with the guys. Um, Loki is okay, but it's not wowing me the way the first wave of Marvel TV did. And I would say the same thing about the movies, both DC and Marvel. It's like we'll see how the Marvels does in a couple weeks, but I don't think it's going to go away, Sal. But I do think we might reach an oversaturation point where it might pull back a little bit. And I think superhero movies, it's like westerns. Once the genre really took a hold, they're not going anywhere. It's going to always be there. But I am a little disappointed, and I also wonder. You were more part of it in the 90s, but it kind of reminds me of where the creation sci-fi cons went, where they just kind of oversaturated. People got bored and they walked away. And I don't know if I don't think we're there yet, but I wonder if that's going to happen to some of the more shows that kind of lean on Hollywood in ways that you were saying. Luca doesn't.
Well, I think you're already seeing it, John. I think if you talk to artists, they'll tell you that the return on investment, so to speak, or the money they're making at these shows is getting smaller because not every show is a moneymaker. I used to do 2 shows a month, and they're not all worth doing. I mean, just because they say, hey, we got 150,000 people there, doesn't mean they're making any money. It doesn't mean that you're going to set up there and say, hey, that's a great show. So there are some shows that are better for artists than others. Now you need to kind of know how to go and market yourself and be ready and not just hang up your shingle and say, here I am. You have to promote the shit out of it. And even I rep Bill Sienkiewicz and Alex Ross. I never just show up and go, oh, they're going to know who I am. They're going to be ready for us. They're going to see the name and people think we get the booth for free. We don't get anything for free. And we have to promote the hell out of it on every social media thing. You have to have con exclusives. You got to figure out ways to constantly, have your Buick, your Pontiac, your Cutlass, your Ford, your Cadillac. You have to have different, but you also you got to work your ass off. But there's a lot of shows that, no offense, they're just not money makers. They're not worth doing. They're worth doing if you want to go kill an afternoon, go kick the tires, go buy a couple of back issues of,
sure,
Dial H for Hero or whatever the hell. But not every one of them is worth doing. I mean, and so when people say, hey, I didn't see you at, in Atlanta, I'm like, or Charlotte or some of these other great shows, those shows may be great for certain things. But when I got to set up a big booth and have a lot of overhead, you're going to go there and lose your ass. And the same with Artist Alley. When you go and you see this enormous presence of all these big stars there, well, guess who's going to get their ass kicked at that show? It's usually Artist Alley. And then you got cosplay, Funko, whatever the flavor of the month is that they're there. I tell people, great, you went to the con, buy a comic book. Oftentimes people don't buy comics when they go to cons.
I wonder, Sal, because, and I know Heidi McDonald has talked about this too, and I see it happening more in places like Canada, where instead of having a comic convention, it's a CAF, it's a comic art festival.
Yeah,
and that really does kind of center more on cartoonists and stuff.
Yeah,
and I wonder if that is a way for artists to kind of recapture that comic buying audience and still make it out, for in public and everything. So,
well, I mean, a perfect example. I mean, on the other side of the coin, take Italy, for example. Now, Luca's going to have well over 200,000 people at Luca for 5 days, and the streets will be a shitstorm. Yet we can't sell out of sketchbooks because it's a different dynamic there. The kids under 20 are not given credit cards. They will not give young people credit cards in Italy the way they give them here. I mean, my God, my daughter's got a credit card. They'll give you a credit. Okay, so if they don't have the
Oh, yeah.
extra 20 euros, John, in their pocket, they're not buying your sketchbook or whatever the hell it is. So you have to rely on a different demographic to buy it. Now, Luca's a big original art show for us because a lot of the European art collectors and European art dealers go to Luca to buy art from the artists directly, or American guys that they don't come over here. They don't do American shows. So we do a lot of original art sales at Luca. But like, for example, I do the stuff that I do there just to kind of have the table look crowded because people like to stand around and look at people draw and get a sketch and all that. But our lower tiered items for the younger audience in Luca, even though there's 200,000 people there, will not sell out because the younger audience in those countries, in those the smaller village type shows in Italy, the kids don't have a lot of disposable income with credit cards the way we do here in the U.S. Here, if you don't got it, you throw it on the card. Well, not in Italy, So we'll bring the new sketchbook, but we'll bring, I don't know, 300, 400 Alex Ross sketchbooks. We won't sell out. No way. At 20 euros, we won't sell out because it's a different, it's a different vibe.
Yeah, I understand. No, absolutely.
My point is you got to treat each show differently. You got to kind of know, how to sell ice to an Eskimo at one show, but not at the other show.
100%. No, I get what you're saying, man.
Yeah.
Our buddy Warren Drummond apparently says he's going to be on a panel at Lightbox this Friday. Apparently, that's the convention where artists come first. Well, that's Jimmy DeMonakis' show, I want to say, Lightbox.
Yeah, yeah.
Pretty sure.
Jimmy's a good guy. So's Warren. Warren,
absolutely.
His book just came out. I mean, his anybody who's into storyboarding or wants to pursue that should definitely check it out because
there it is.
There's nobody better in the business than Warren.
There you go. There's Warren's book right there. He was on a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, it's a terrific product. I'm glad to see it. It couldn't happen to a nicer guy.
Yeah, and also that's fun art to get, conceptual art, or however, I don't even know what Warren sells, but I'm always fascinated by that stuff. Our buddy Gabe Hardman, another guy like that, that does conceptual art. Is Bill allowed to display? Because he does a lot of Hollywood conceptual art, and I know there are NDAs, and some things he makes art for never even make it to film.
He did a lot of work on this. He did 3 months on Across the Spider-Verse, but Sony will put certain restrictions on what you can show and what you can't show because, like you said, because there's NDAs. Now, they're usually that stuff kind of calms down after, 6 months or so because, the audience has moved on.
Sure.
But you don't want to, if you've got an ongoing relationship with those people, you don't want to piss anybody off. But Bill likes to show it. Bill likes to show his stuff too. But as long as he knows it's cool with them, then he shows it.
I met Ryan Meinheimer, who's one of the main conceptual Marvel cinematic universe artists, and we did a panel at C2E2, and he had rolling slides of various pages and stuff. And I'm like, can I shoot video on this panel? He's like, I can't, NDAs. I'm like, oh man. I go, well, me just keep going, man. That looks great, man. That's amazing. He's not going to make much of an audio panel and stuff. So unfortunately, we can't do it. So no, I understand that. What Sal, another big bugaboo right now, and rightfully so, is Minor Ding. Thank you, Mitch. I got his name wrong. Ryan. But one of the big problems right now is the ever-growing AI, artificial intelligence thing. What do you think about this shit?
I think, not to sound like the old guy, but I don't worry about it too much. I think you always have to kind of take into account how technology is going to change things. But, I was not to age myself too much, but I worked in advertising when Photoshop was introduced, and it put all the photo retouchers out of work. And when key lining changed from, literally rubber cement and cut out key line to where it all became, a digital. Yeah. Where the scanner replaced live film, and photographers went from Hasselblads, these huge cameras, to digital photography. I saw whole floors of secretaries told you have to learn data processing. You have to learn how to type on a computer, and they got rid of the typewriter. and it made it obsolete like almost within a year. These 4 technologies had changed careers where whole floors of keyliners, paste up and keyline artists were shown the door. And all these little guys with magnifying glasses, John, and single hair brushes who used to touch up, negatives to physically paint on the negative overnight were shown the door because of Photoshop. But you adapt, you adapt or you get soft. And if it's not going to go away, screaming about it isn't going to change it.
No.
You can kind of implement it, but I really still believe that the heart and soul of art and the DNA in art comes from the artist. Now, AI, I know, is much more sophisticated than just, when the fax machine was going to do away with the post office kind of shit. But, just like payphones, and every time I see a payphone with my kids, they ask what that is, or cassettes or 8-tracks, I think you have to adapt. There's always going to be that. I understand why artists get kind of hung up, especially if they're going to lose jobs based on scripts and being written AI and things like that. But I don't know. I don't worry about it too much because I don't even want to use a Wacom tablet because I like using sketchbooks. I like using paper and brush and marker because I still like the textile feel of art. But 20 years from now or for my kid, it might be something completely different.
Understood. Yeah. Do Bill and Alex still?
Alex doesn't have a computer at all. He doesn't do anything digitally other than, when we have to do a patch or, a color adjustments with the scanner. But he does still everything on paper and gouache and watercolor. Bill uses the computer, not AI, but he uses the computer sometimes for layouts and comps. But most of his work is still mixed media, which is he uses, gouache, watercolor, inks, colored pencils. I mean, Bill uses, you name it, he uses it. And he utilizes the computer as a tool, but not to create, from scratch, so to speak. But he has done some pieces, of course, that are all digital.
Okay. Warren has a good point here. He says the difference is that AI is there so anyone can draw. A friend was on a job where a producer had 3 non-artist assistants do concept work. 3 scrubs are suddenly Ralph McQuarrie.
Yeah.
Not the same as CGI Photoshop coming into the biz.
Yeah. No, I mean, he's got a point. I mean, that's going to happen. But what Warren knows this better than anybody because he works in the film business. I remember when Steve, who's the guy who created Winter Soldier.
Steve Epting?
Epting.
Yeah.
When Epting, I was with Epting at Toronto one year, a million years ago, right when the Cap movies were coming out. And they called him about doing conceptual art for Winter Soldier, because that was his at the time. And he was all excited. And then I ran into him a month later and I said, hey, how did it go with the film stuff? And he said, they just Googled it. They just Googled Winter Soldier, the art department, and just put up mood boards in the production office and didn't want to pay the artist. Now, that's the way it always works out. When Alex, all the way back to the first Spider-Man movie with Tobey Maguire, and Alex did some conceptual Spider-Man layouts and drawings for them, they didn't want to pay him because they just were like, oh, we're Hollywood and we're just using it as conceptual art. And when he worked on Unbreakable, same thing. Shyamalan used a lot of Alex conceptual art from War on Crime and just tore the graphic novel apart and they hung it on the wall. So there's a lot of that thieving going on from production companies that don't want to pay anyway. And, Warren, I'm sure, has walked through a million production offices and seen, concept art that was clearly not drawn by the art department, but it was just stuff they Googled it and printed it out from the computer. So, that shit's going to happen to a certain degree.
Understood. Absolutely. Obviously it's the week before Halloween, and I think kind of a running theme on Word Balloon. I had my buddy Matt Klickstein on Thursday. He's editing a book of interviews with Lloyd Kaufman, the Trauma movie guy. And what are your go-to Halloween movies or horror movies?
The Thing has always been the one that haunts my dreams.
The Carpenter one
from high school. Yeah.
Yeah.
One with
For
The
Russell.
Thing, The Shining.
Yeah,
Gets
good
under
one.
my skin. Now, I got movies that I like that scare me and that I think are great, and then I got ones that get under my skin. The Shining gets under my skin. The Thing gets under my skin, and it's one of those remote droppers where when it's on, you put the remote down and you got to see Kurt Russell, finish it. Um, I like Psycho a lot. Gets under my
course.
skin a little bit, for I mean, that's not much of a stretch. Shutter Island, I like the first half of it,
Good.
and then I like it's going somewhere really good for the first 40 minutes. And then it just, I don't know, man, it goes off the rails. I mean, it's like, I don't know what happens to it, but I like Christine, even though it wasn't a lot
Love
of
Christine.
people aren't a big fan of
Oh,
Carrie.
I love Christine. That's a great
Sissy
movie.
Spacek as Carrie was always the one.
Carrie's amazing. The original Carrie, absolutely.
Yeah, huge Brian De Palma fan. So I would have to say those four,
Philip Kaufman's Body Snatchers from the 70s.
Yeah.
With Nimoy is one of my favorites.
Yeah.
And I love I really, and more for the kitsch of it. I love the Universal movies. I love a lot of.
Those are like, that's Mount Rushmore. The Universal movies. I mean, the original Frankenstein, The Bride of Frankenstein, to me has always been one of the most overlooked classic. I mean, the scenes when they're in the crypt and they're in the mausoleum, and I like Creature from the Black Lagoon. I mean, I watched Abbott and Costello. I mean, Frankenstein the other night. I mean, that's not that's one of the. I mean, one, and all those Universal movies are fantastic. The Wolfman.
When
we wouldn't sleep when the Wolfman was on when I was a kid. I mean, you had to sleep with the baseball bat when we were kids, and that was like my mother would use that as the babysitter to keep us from getting out of bed. Was you put the Wolfman on, because the mummy wasn't going to catch you. I always loved when I saw the Mummy, and I'm like, he ain't going to catch us. The guy walked, the Wolfman's going to catch your ass.
Oh yeah,
if you're running with your date and she sprains her ankle, because there's always somebody steps on a twig, and when the Wolfman's chasing you, you don't sprain your ankle. I mean, I'll run on one knee. I'll run with my legs chopped off from the Wolfman. He ain't gonna stop for no bullshit. I sprained my ankle.
When in Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein, when Bela Lugosi turns into a bat, and the Wolfman grabs him and they fly out the window and stuff, and it's like, yeah, that's how fast the Wolfman is. No, I'm with you.
Yeah.
All right, Don Lenz also a little shout out for Abbott and Costello. Chick.
Yeah, I was on Son of Svengoolie on Saturday. So,
did I miss you on Son of Svengoolie?
No, I wasn't on. It was on Son of Svengoolie. It was on, and Rich.
Sure.
If you've ever had Rich on your show, you got to get Rich on.
Oh yeah,
Rich is the best. He was in New York. I didn't get a chance to talk to him, but I saw he was in New York.
He's making the rounds because Frank Miller put out that anthology of Svengoolie stuff, and I don't think issue 2 is out yet. But no, he's been making the convention rounds and stuff.
Rich is. I've had a chance to sit with him at a couple of different parties and different things. He actually lives a couple blocks from my house.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, no, he lives right here in this neighborhood, and he's the best. If you ever see him ever at a show, you got to talk to him.
We gotta seriously. All right, that's another reason why I got to come by you. And let's have the three of us have lunch or something like that.
I'll reach. I mean, I don't know. Have you had him on Word Balloon?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Sal, he gives me the greatest compliment at C2E2. He's like, "Oh no, John, from now on, you're moderating my panel because we have a great rapport." Yeah, I mean, again, he's a little older than us, but we grew up on the same stuff.
Yeah.
And I always say, my God, if I were his age, he had the career in broadcasting. The horror host stuff, sure, but all of his radio stuff that he did, he used to do sketch comedy on radio all the time. And it's like, that was kind of what I wanted to bring to the Score when I was at the Score and everything. Yeah. So no, we get each other really well, and he's incredible with me. Rosie 0216 says he just jumped in. Big fan of Sal. Did we get a new book update yet? So what's going on with your stuff?
Yeah, I'm on chapter. Well, the goal is to finish this year. But it's become, as I always do, because I don't have an editor. It's become this longer. I'm already like 135 pages into. Dago's on the Moon, which is the project I'm on, and I'm one of the chapter 3 is the last chapter.
Okay.
It's the finale, and I'm finished right at the end of chapter 2 because I'm like straining to get this thing done because I want to get it finished, and I'm gonna finish it, but it's just taking a long time because I'm doing everything again. I'm painting it, and I'm writing it. I'm doing the whole Megillah, but I promise we're gonna do it again. Live we'll do it through the comic stores, but also through Kickstarter, and because it's a great way to get it direct to the public on Kickstarter. But it's going to be probably 235 pages.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a lot of work, and
Outstanding, man.
I'll have the usual bunch of guys. I don't know if I don't know if Kickstarter is going to let me say Dago's on the Moon. But that's the working title.
Well, you do the ampersand or whatever the A in the circle is for the A, and you do the comic strip thing when you can't swear. Yeah, you put the.
I don't know. To me, Dago was never a bad thing. If you knew the guy, but I don't know in today's world if I mean, I'm going to use it because it's kind of. It was always the identity of the book was the title, especially being an Italian guy, because it's a love letter to the Italian the Italian Air Force and to Italy. It's not meant as a
slur.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, I could go with the Italian brother, which is Fratello sulla Luna, which is that's how they would say it in Italian. But in Italy, they don't even know what the term Dago means. They don't even know. They've never heard of it.
That's what Sinatra and Dean Martin called each other.
When I was growing up, if you said WAP or you said Guinea, that was bad. If
you
said Dago, it was not bad. I mean, it was seen as, hey, it was always just kind of like a slang term.
I understand.
But
Sal,
I don't know. It's a different world now.
My dad grew up in. He was the only Greek in a predominantly Italian neighborhood. They used the Dago word all the time, and it was not a slur. No, it's like you said. It's crazy, man. I haven't watched it yet. There's a movie. It's a drama. It's not a documentary, but it's about Nat Sweetwater Clifton, the first black guy to play in the NBA.
Okay.
And he grew up in Chicago and grew up near my dad's neighborhood. And he said, "Oh my God, we used to play softball against him." And he goes, he's like Babe Ruth. He goes, every time he was at bat, it was a home run.
Yeah.
He was an amazing athlete. I want to watch it. I'm very curious about that.
Yeah.
So, Chicago connection and everything.
Right. We grew up in a my neighborhood was predominantly Italian and Irish, Puerto Rican, and Assyrian, Armenian, because I went to Sent High School. And Sent High School was everything. I mean, there was really no dominant minority in the sense of it was all mixed together so evenly. A lot of Vietnamese because it was coming out of the 70s. It was a lot of Vietnamese refugees. We had a lot of Vietnamese kids, a lot of Filipino kids. So I never really felt, if somebody called you Dago, you didn't really think about it. I mean, it was just always, it was always about race back then. You remember? It was,
Yeah. Well, everyone could take a joke. My God, I knew a ton of Polish people in the 70s at the height of Polish humor.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's like, they're like, okay, whatever. I mean, again, it wasn't a big deal, but everyone needs to be offended these days. It is.
Well, it was also, I played football. So when you were on the team with these guys were your friends. So I could say things to you that other people couldn't.
Sure.
I could, make a Spiros joke to you. I could call you, hey, John, make a joke about, something Greek related. Because we were friends. But now if it came from, it came from
a stranger,
outsider, then that was a different story.
Absolutely.
My friend, my best friend growing up was a Puerto Rican kid. And then my best friend in high school, Caniceres, he was Cuban. And, we never thought of it like that. His mother was very Cuban. She barely spoke English, My grandma was the same way. She was always mad that we didn't speak Italian or Sicilian. She spoke, her English got better. But my Uncle Mariano had been in this country 40 years and didn't speak a word of English. My father used to joke. He's like, "Oh, give him a break. He's only been here 40 years." He couldn't speak.
My Aunt Irene was like that.
Yeah, they refused.
Exactly. Never wanted to get into the culture. And
it's kind of like the way, growing up, the Italians hated my grandma used to say the Italians hated the Irish until they started marrying them. and it's that way now with Mexicans and Hispanics, where they're the new Irish, where if you look at Chicago, most of the cops are Mexican and Hispanic. And that's just they're the dominant wave coming through now, and it's always the way it was.
Yes.
Whereas, and it's like if you see a lot of Hispanic families now, they're losing their kids from the sense of they're becoming Americanized. They got their cell phones and their social media apps and all that, and a lot of their family don't really speak the language, and that's the way my family was. We wanted to be Americanized, and we didn't understand the mafia jokes and the Godfather jokes. Whereas I told my wife this, I'm like, growing up, you remember how it was, John? I can't remember ever not being asked, do you have any family in the mafia? If I've been asked that once, I've been asked that 1,000 times growing up. They assume because you're Italian, you have relatives in the mafia,
And then there's
now everybody on the show's thinking, does he have any relatives in the mafia? And the question is, of course, there's no such thing as the mafia. It was something created by the media to keep Italians down. Just like the FBI stands for forever bothering Italians. Is what we.
Well. Sadly, I learned that I did have a couple of cousins that were in organized crime. So there's the great.
Yeah, I had relatives that were juiced in. I won't lie for a minute. I mean, I knew growing up you had guys that things fell off the truck all the time, but it wasn't that, 99% of the culture goes to work every day. And the 1% that's glamorized in Hollywood or made more interesting stories was perceived that way. And Italians do a lot to embrace that part of the culture.
Sure they do.
Don't kid yourself.
Of course they do.
You can't buy a house in Chicago from an Italian family that doesn't have at least 3 copies of The Godfather in the basement.
You're absolutely right about that.
Crawl space.
I told you my grandmother was a widow in her 30s, had 3 kids, and she was in the neighborhood where the Como Inn used to be.
Okay. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. And knew Tony Accardo when he was a young man.
Okay.
And even caught him breaking into a car.
Yeah.
And he's like, she's like, Tony, what are you doing to that man's car? He's like, it's okay, and everything's fine.
Right.
But we had she had a like basically like a bodega, a modern bodega.
Yeah.
Mom and pop grocery store.
Mom and pop store, we called them. Yeah.
Sold sub sandwiches. She called them poor boys and stuff.
Sure.
We had there was a big table in the back room where we kept supplies and stuff. And my older cousin just one day goes, Grandma, why aren't we ever allowed to use the table? Because it was always, nothing was ever kept on it. And it's like, that would help us out, more space and everything, put stuff down. She's like, no. When the boys in the neighborhood need to have a meeting, they come here and they go in the back room and they sit down. And I got to tell you, man, like I said, she was a widow with 3 little kids. That group of people, they protected her.
Yeah.
And nothing bad ever happened to my grandmother. She lived there her whole life.
Yeah.
And while that neighborhood went up and down, and never a problem because they had pity on her being a widow with 3 kids. So.
That was I'm telling, and that was a really juiced in neighborhood too around about.
I know
that was that shit didn't go. There was a lot of olive oil on the street over there, boy. Let me tell you.
Absolutely, man. No, 100%. You're killing me, man. Shit. What else? Did I tell you I saw this Glenn Ford movie on a TV movie from the 70s on YouTube, and it cracked me up. It was about a UFO sighting by Air Force guys who were then detained by the Air Force and taken for questioning. And Glenn Ford's their commander, and he's got to bust them out and get to the bottom of it all. Pardon me. It was great.
There's Glenn Ford. There's some of those, there's some of those movies every now and then that you're like, man, how the hell did I not see this one? You think you've seen them all. It's like that with Ernest Borgnine,
God, yeah.
Where there's all of a sudden one will pop up where he's, where you're like, he'll show up in Willard, or
yes,
he's
the bad guy in Willard.
He's the bad guy. Or he'll show up in these movies with Stella Stevens or and you're like, whoa, he's in it for 20 minutes.
Well, Poseidon Adventure, she's his wife.
Yeah.
That's true.
And because I always tell Warren that I go, growing up, that was my old man. I mean, that was my father. My father was a combination of Ernest Borgnine and Ed Asner and Rich Man, Poor Man.
With the hair on,
Jordan.
hair on his shoulder.
That was my father. He walked around with the, with the Dago tee, with the hair.
Yeah, absolutely.
He had a bypass, and he'd have the scar. He'd be at the grill with the scar going. Flipping burgers, and that's just, you grew up. And I used to see it on TV, and I'm like, that was him right there. I didn't need to see him. Oh, well, who'd play your dad in the movie? I'm like, right there. It was Ernest Borgnine. It didn't go any further than Ernest Borgnine.
Have you seen, I mean, certainly we all know the Italian Westerns, but there's a great documentary called Euro Crime, and it really focuses on all those Italian gangster movies that came out.
I haven't seen it. No.
Really great. And a lot of times they would get Henry Silva or Borgnine or Martin Balsam to be in those movies.
Yeah.
And they were just like the international Westerns that were made in Spain and Italy and stuff like that. They'd get an American like Lee Van Cleef.
Yeah.
And
there's a lot of really bad ones.
That's what I'm saying.
After the Godfather.
Yes.
Remember how after Star Wars it was the new trend. So whatever was successful, jumped on it. And there was a lot of bad sci-fi movies after Star Wars. There's a lot of really bad mob movies that came out right after The Godfather.
That's what I'm talking about. Absolutely, man.
Yeah. I was telling my daughter this the other day, because she just started getting into Titanic. She started watching Titanic.
Okay.
And I said, cinematically, in the history of cinema, the worst Italian accent in the history of cinema is the guy in Titanic.
I don't even remember the Italian guy.
Leonardo DiCaprio's friend, who they win the tickets in the game, has got the worst Italian accent. I mean, it is something like you'd see in a high school play.
That's hilarious.
Where it's not even a Chef Boyardee commercial. It's so bad, John. And I'm like, for James Cameron, all the money he spent, you can't get a real Italian kid with an accent that I can believe. But like, I was watching Across 125th Street.
110th Street.
110th Street.
Yes, great movie. Love that movie.
Thinking of Luke Cage with 125th Street.
Okay.
And the mobsters in that are awful. They're all, what is it? Who plays the head guy?
Tony Quinn.
The head mobster in 120.
I gotta re-look it up because Anthony Quinn, Yaphet Kotto.
Anthony Quinn plays the detective. But there's real bad mobsters in that one, and you could tell it's like they're right out of The Godfather. They're trying to emulate The Godfather.
Mitch, all right. Mitch mentions for bad Star Wars knockoffs, Battle Beyond the Stars.
Yeah,
and of course Wayne mentioned Space Hunter, Adventures in the Forbidden Zone.
Yeah.
Oh, Warren says Tony Francioso was
a young Tony Francioso. He's terrible. He's not a good heavy.
Because he was good in City Hall. Cusack movie.
I mean,
and he was the old mafioso in that.
And I love the guy. He was in one of my favorite guys who shows up in those mob movies is the guy from French Connection, who plays the guy him and his brother. And you see him. He's in City Hall also. And he shows up in Fist with Sylvester Stallone as the mob boss, and I can't think of his name now. But there's a couple of those Italian actors that show up, or even they're just character actors that play great Italians.
Oh yeah, well, Robert Costanzo, who, Jesus, you've seen him in a million movies. I saw him at Terrificon, Mitch's show. He plays Harvey Bullock on the animated Batman, and he looks. And in regular, just when you see him, he looks like he could have been Harvey Bullock and stuff.
Yeah.
But he, they even had him on the Mafia video game. He's like an older mafioso in that and everything. And he's just perfect. He's in Saturday Night Fever. He's done a million TV shows. He's in a million.
Yeah. I know. You're
right. Fat bald guy.
He's terrific. Yeah.
Big fan of his. Yeah. I like him. Yeah. Oh, and that's funny. Mitch mentions another great Italian character actor, Tony Lobianco.
Tony Lobianco is the one I was thinking of. He was in French Connection. He was in City Hall. He was in.
He's in Pope of Greenwich Village. He's
in Pope of Greenwich Village. He's in Fist. He's in.
He played Marciano in the 70s.
He played Marciano in the 70s. He's always plays a heavy in those movies. He plays a great lawyer on Law and Order once in a while.
Oh, wow. That's cool.
Yeah.
No, I love that shit. Another guy who does a lot of character work, but I remember his bad stand-up act, Art Metrano.
Sure.
That's the guy. Da, 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 da,
Yeah.
He's in the Police Academy movies, among
Right.
other things.
That's
Oh
right.
man, Warren. All right, Warren mentions a great movie, The 7-Ups. Remember The 7-Ups?
The 7-Ups is fantastic. It's clearly right after Bullet. You know.
Yes.
Where
Very good.
Roy Scheider was the same way. Roy Scheider's fantastic. And,
Oh God, broke my heart when he passed away.
Yeah, Roy Scheider is the last movie I saw him in was in the one with Voight and Matt Damon, the Coppola directed film where they're lawyers, and Danny DeVito plays his partner.
Oh, Rainmaker.
Yeah, Roy Scheider was. I think that's his last role where he plays the real scummy insurance owner, and yeah, but he's fantastic. And,
it kind of blew my mind in the '90s when he was on that Sequest show.
Sure,
captain.
I forgot about that. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, it's the same when he showed up in the Jaws movie, second Jaws.
Well, I mean, my God, and yeah, that like the most unnecessary sequel ever. But it made so much money.
Much money. You knew that it had to be. They just offered him. It's like Godfather 3. I mean, why bother?
All right, Mitch mentions 29th Street with Anthony LaPaglia, and I love that movie. And it is funny how good of an accent LaPaglia developed, being an Australian guy and everything. What do you think of LaPaglia?
I like. You know who else I like in the Gotti? There's like 20 Gotti movies. I like Armand Assante as Gotti.
I agree.
And Anthony Quinn plays the heavy in that. But I really think one of the better small budget mob movies who he chews up the scenery a little bit, but I think he overall I really like what he does, in that movie.
When as we talk about Anthony Quinn, I've been finding really like early 40s movies that he's in. And like it's a great Christmas movie. It's Edward G. Robinson and Ronald Reagan's first wife, Jane, whatever her name was. She's his daughter, and they're ex-cons, and they buy a luggage business, and really they're just doing it because the bank is next door, and they're going to drill a hole through the wall and steal all the money. Anthony Quinn was his main rival in jail. And he gets out of jail and he starts hassling Edward G. Robinson and stuff. And it's Anthony Quinn when he's really young and, dare I say, almost good looking. Almost.
Yeah.
Not quite, but like certainly better looking than the shriveled up
like
Greek guy that he played.
It's like when Telly Savalas shows up in Birdman or Alcatraz, where he's got hair,
Yes.
And he I'm telling you, he's terrific in it because he plays a really twisted con in that movie.
Telly Savalas was a fantastic actor.
He's always been one of my favorite, but you really want to see a great Telly Savalas pre-Kojak and everything else is in the Birdman of Alcatraz. He's terrific in that.
I agree.
And he doesn't get a lot. I don't think people kind of, pay attention as much because of that. But it's a lot like, when you see the guy I can't think of his name now. He plays Al Pacino's boss in Scarface, and he was on The Sopranos.
Oh, yeah. That's what's his face? Loja.
Loja in Somebody Up There Likes Me, where he plays the scummy, really young Loja in that.
Remember,
where he's extorting, where he's trying to blackmail Paul Newman.
Remember his 60s TV show, The Cat?
Yeah.
Where it was kind of like It Takes a Thief. He was a cat burglar that was a good guy.
Yeah.
I'm a big Robert Loggia fan. I love, and
really, Loggia's terrific.
Classic Italian actor, but obviously plays a Cuban boss in Scarface, and you buy it. Buy it. It was great.
Or playing Richard Gere's father in Officer and a Gentleman. Just the opening scene, that's it. But he's terrific. I mean, he steals the scene.
Jagged Edge. He's the private eye that Glenn Close.
One of my favorite Loggia roles is where he asks Glenn Close, "What are you doing? Playing with yourself?" When she's sitting on the stairs.
That's outstanding. I agree with you, man. No, he's a total scuzzball private eye, but exactly. Yeah. So, but he loves her in a fatherly way.
Yes.
And it's a great relationship. Yeah, yeah, you're right.
Where she tells him he was trash at the end. When she shoots him, he says, F him, he was trash.
Yeah, exactly. Fuck him. He was trash. Yes. Spoiler. Great movie. Great movie. If you haven't seen it, everybody, you're killing me. See, this is why we talk, buddy.
Loja's everything he's good in. You know, I like him, and I
Mark
really like Sahara with Humphrey Bogart, where he's got the
Oh, the
tank
classic.
and the Italian guy. You know, the guy who plays the Italian guy, nominated for Academy Award. He's not Italian. I mean, all my life seeing him where he plays the Italian prisoner of war, he breaks your heart. I mean, he's fantastic. I mean, where he's begging Bogart not to let him die in the desert. And, you know, I mean, you're like, oh my God. And then when I looked him up, I hadn't realized at all that he was just a character actor who played anything. He was one of those guys. He'd play an Irish guy, he could play an Italian guy. And that little part, he was nominated for an Academy Award in Sahara as the Italian POW, where he gives that speech about Mussolini when he's in the cave with the Nazi pilot, the Luftwaffe pilot. But as a kid, that really resonated because, you know, it was like, wow, I didn't really know a lot about the Italian side of World War II.
No, you know, it's funny. I was watching the from the 80s, the miniseries that George C. Scott made playing Mussolini.
Okay.
And I even put a picture on Facebook.
I saw it, but it was a while ago. I have to rewatch that.
Pretty good miniseries. He was great as Mussolini, and in his makeup, because he kind of had that potato nose that El Duce had. And I'm like, you know, he would have made a great Penguin. I hate to say it, but George C. Scott.
I really liked him in one of my favorite Christmas carols is his version of Scrooge. You know, and another great George C. Scott movie from the 70s is The Hospital.
Fantastic movie. Patty Chayefsky, great writer.
Yeah, and
I
overlooked,
love that movie.
You know, and then the obvious, and I like where he plays he's just got a small part of where he plays Alec Baldwin's mentor, where Alec Baldwin's the doctor that screws over Nicole Kidman.
Malice?
He gives you that, Mal, he gives you that speech where he is God. And
right.
C. Scott comes in and he's there, you know, he's kind of his mentor, but he steals everything he's in, George C. Scott.
When Anatomy of a Murder, when he's the prosecutor against Jimmy Stewart.
Yeah.
And that's like one of the earliest things I remember seeing him in. And it really wasn't. I think he probably had a few years already in the business.
Yeah.
But he just, you can't keep your eyes off of George C. Scott. He was
all the stuff they did in the 70s is like that. It's terrific. You know, The Gambler with James Caan has always been one of my great favorite 70s movies. The Hospital, Dog Day Afternoon, you know, and Serpico.
Marathon Man.
You know, I mean, if you could find a better performance by Al Pacino than Dog Day Afternoon or Serpico. You know, Serpico, forget it. I mean, it's like a tour de force seeing him in Serpico.
Well, movies got kind of candy ass, and it's funny. Tarantino said this, and I sort of agree with him. When Rocky came out, and even though Rocky loses, it's a happy ending. He gets Adrian.
Yeah.
And it's like all of a sudden Hollywood had forgotten about happy ending movies, and up until that point, all the 70s movies, a lot of the titles we mentioned, and some that were made after Rocky too, like Marathon Man and things, but Boys in the Band, very gritty homosexual movie.
Yeah.
I mean, really, even for it being a comedy, The Hospital.
Cruising, remember Cruising?
Cruising, 79, Pacino.
Yeah, I mean, that was really raw. Yeah.
But yeah, like 70s had a lot of great edgy movies like that, and weren't afraid of, you know, leaving you a little depressed when you're leaving the theater and stuff.
Yeah.
So I always appreciated that. Isn't it interesting? And it's something I've been talking about as well, where beyond the tentpole movies, like the superhero stuff and everything, and horror, which is always a big seller, I don't know what happened to the mid-budget drama or comedy that would claim a summer and be like a big box office hit. It doesn't seem like Hollywood is interested in making those for the big screen. You might see occasionally movies like that, and they wind up on the streamers. They wind up on Apple. They wind up on Netflix, Amazon.
It's the weirdest thing. It's almost like there's a as an artist and as a creator, one of the greatest clips that you'll ever see about that addresses the movie business. I mean, the music business in a similar way of what was going on in the 60s and the early 70s compared to what has happened to the music business now, was this clip by Frank Zappa. And Frank Zappa said what he could never understand about being an artist was that people will argue, arguably the greatest era for music was the 60s and the early 70s, until when you went into Zeppelin, but especially the 60s and the 70s. And he said, the guys that were running the music business then were these little Jewish guys with cigars who had their feet up on the desk. They weren't these hippie guys with bare feet who are walking around in a studio and getting high and, and experimenting with LSD. But he goes, when all those guys took over, they're like, they took the soul away of the music. What the hell happened to the music business? So how is it that all these guys in the Brill building, these Jewish guys, these old guys who were like, whatever, all that great music out of that era came out of that. But yet, and it's the same thing with the movie business, where you had these shot on location, tremendous art movies from the 70s. And even Stallone, in an interview I just saw with him from the 70s, said how much he hated the movies from the 70s, how depressing they were and all this bullshit. And I'm thinking, what? Because that's my favorite era of movies is the 70s. All those movies in the 70s, Mega Man and Planet of the Apes and, all that, Dog Day Afternoon and Taxi Driver. I mean, and then you look at the stuff we got now and you're just kind of like, what? There's just no soul in these movies. There's nothing, like you said, that you walked out of the theater. I'll never forget walking out of the theater after I saw The Deer Hunter. Even though it was later, wasn't, or, as 70s, it was much later.
79 or 80.
You were carried it around with you for days when you saw at the ending of Taxi Driver. We'd never seen anything like that. I mean, and it just, you don't have that kind of like, oh my God, a night at the theater anymore.
Did you, it's funny, Gabe Hardman, me and Ian Brill reviewed from 1979. The Silent Partner with Elliot Gould and Christopher Plummer.
Yeah, okay, sure,
and,
yeah.
And Susanna York, Lara from the Superman movies, is the girl.
There's another one that made some Capricorn 1 and anything
Love
with Elliot
Capricorn
Gould
1.
in that era. I can watch Capricorn 1 and how great Elliot Gould is. And now it's almost seen as a campy movie. I'm like, I don't think so. It was a great Telly Savalas where keep your goddamn head down, where he's the pilot, at the end of the movie.
I forgot about that, but Hal Holbrook and the whole
space you remember Telly Savalas is the crop duster that he goes and gets to help rescue, Brolin.
I'm just saying, James Brolin, Sam Waterston, and O.J. Simpson. Those are your actors.
Like Hal Holbrook is fantastic, and then a young Sam Waterston and O.J. Simpson are the other two astronauts.
With James Brolin, yeah.
With James Brolin, and Waterston, before he went on to Law and Order, he was like a kid in that movie,
Well, even he made that great spy movie with Matthau, Hopscotch.
Yeah.
And he's his protege.
Or the in-laws, with Falk and Alda. I mean, the in-laws is just, it's like, it's up there, man. You got to watch the in-laws. I mean, it's incredible. I mean, Peter Falk is just, I mean, I still remember Peter Falk in Mad Mad World. I mean,
that's one of the cab drivers with Rochester.
Yeah, the cops in this town are morons. He's talking on the phone when Sid Caesar goes up.
Yep.
The cops in this town are morons.
Thank God Spencer Tracy was as good as he was in that movie.
Yeah.
I love when his wife and his daughter are yelling at him on the phone, and he's just sitting there having to listen to it.
And he's holding the phones together. Talk to your mother. Yeah. Now there's the anniversary, there's a great making of Mad Mad World that they put out where they interview Jonathan Winters and Carl Reiner, and they talk about, Phil Silvers and Ethel Merman and how much they all had to get paid the same, and that Phil Silvers was just a degenerate gambler, and he used to have to call his agent but he really wasn't calling his agent. He was calling to place bets.
Sure. Well,
Jonathan Winters talks about how he just came out of a sanitarium when he made that movie. He was in the Marine Corps, and then he,
Oh yeah.
I had no idea. Absolutely. The history of Jonathan Winters.
I always love when you always show this clip on Facebook of it's Barry Chase and Dick Shawn doing the twist, and you're like, my wife and I are celebrating because our kids are back in school.
Yeah. That is Sylvester. I mean, he steals the movie. I mean, you ask anybody about that movie and you say, who do you remember? They all say Sylvester.
It's true.
I mean, it's like he steals that movie. I had no idea who he was. And when I saw Mad Mad World, I knew everybody else. But when I saw that, you had to look up who the hell he was. And because Sylvester steals the whole damn movie.
Like honestly, that movie, and of course the producers. He's LSD. He's the hippie playing Hitler, and then also, and it's definitely a lesser role, but I still love him in it. The George Hamilton Love at First Bite Dracula. He's
it's like he's clearly only certain roles you're gonna. But even Mickey Rooney,
and Buddy Hackett together.
Mickey Rooney's fantastic. I mean, so's Milton Berle. I mean, Milton Berle was, it's like the stuff he does with Ethel Merman, is my mother. She steals everything she's in with Ethel Merman. But, Peter Falk, it's like, it's my God, the casting of that it's one of those ones. It's almost like Mad World is almost like when you're married, it's almost like the Three Stooges, where you either get it or you don't get it. And my wife is sort of okay, you're watching this one again. And I'm like, just the plane stunts alone in that one. You'll never see stuff like that ever done again, John.
No, you're right.
A guy drives a plane through a hangar. You'll never see that done without CGI today. I mean, it's unheard of to do some of the stunts that they did in that movie.
Well, another movie like that where practical stunts were done, The Stuntman.
Yeah, there you go.
Oh my God, what a great movie, man. And it's one of the last non-CGI action movies where it's like, no, they did all that they really did it. Barbara Hershey, Peter O'Toole, Steve Railsback.
Yeah, I remember the driver. It's not as good, but the driver with Ryan O'Neal is like that, but it kind of, it doesn't really, it was trying to be one of those cop chase movies from the 70s, a la Bullet and the 7 Ops. And it kind of falls off after a while.
I understand. We did good. I think this is a good list for people if they don't know these movies. We gave you a good list that should take you through Christmas. As far as
Panic at Needle Park is great. The Conversation.
Love The Conversation.
Conversation is early Coppola. It's fantastic. Taxi Driver, Serpico, Dog Day Afternoon,
Prince of the City, fantastic. Another Sidney Lumet film. I mean, anything with Sidney Lumet is fantastic. I mean, I'll watch anything. Even 12 Angry Men. Is this early Sidney Lumet? Well, and honestly, I love the original, and an amazing cast. And then in the 90s. William Friedkin remade it for Showtime, and this is when I was hanging with William Peterson, and he was beside himself excited. He got the Robert Webber advertising man part from the original cast. He was in the 90s version, and it was Jack Lemmon, George C. Scott.
Okay.
I mean, a great Gandolfini's in it.
I remember that. Yeah.
Great, right. And it's before The Sopranos. Gandolfini's in it.
Yeah.
Just top to Courtney B. Vance. I mean, they split the Fonda role between Lemmon and Courtney B. Vance because apparently going back to the 50s, Lemmon was so mad that Henry Fonda beat him to get the option because it was originally a play.
Yeah.
And Fonda jumped on it before Lemmon could. And I guess, and this is what Peterson was telling us. He's like, he was so mad he never got to do that back in the 50s, that this was his revenge that Lemmon could finally do it and stuff. Yeah. And he and Scott are as compelling as Lee J. Cobb and Henry Fonda.
Yeah. No, and Tony Danza plays the Ned Beatty role, where he's the sports guy.
Or it was Jack Warden.
Jack Warden, I'm sorry.
But yeah. That's all right, man. No. I mean,
I know. I mean, it's like there's a lot of those movies that they do remind me of being a kid, where we always had these, just, you were sold with the movie poster when you went, the Dirty Dozen and the Iger Sanction, and I mean, just it was like you went Kelly's Heroes, and Outlaw Josie Wales. I mean, it was just one after another of these tremendous movies that even the horrible Dean Martin where he was Mad Helm, and when Sinatra played the detective,
Tony Rome.
I mean, you just like made that movie with like $1,000. You could tell.
Dan Blocker is one of the enforcers in one of the Tony Rome.
Yeah.
But what I love is
that's right. Yeah, we're the guy from Ponderosa. Yeah.
Right. He's Hoss.
Yeah.
Hoss. Yeah. Beating the hell, throwing Frank Sinatra around. What I love about the Tony Rome movies, and especially my Big Fat Greek Wedding 3 came out. Lainey Kazan, who plays the grandmother in My Big Fat Greek Wedding, and stuff, the old lady.
Yes, she's a stripper in that one.
Yes, and I mean,
Yes.
and man, I'm telling you, like
Hot.
Lainey Kazan, goddamn, man,
Very
absolutely,
hot. Yeah,
very hot.
I agree. I pointed my wife out to my wife. I'm like, hey, you remember Big Fat Greek Wedding? And because what wife doesn't love, the
Oh,
Big
yeah.
I mean,
No,
women love that. The whole, what is it they call them now? The rom-com or whatever the hell they call them. They love those movies. So every time it's on, I point out, I'm like, you see her, and then I'll point them out in older movies, and sometimes they look so different that you can't even recognize, because she's had a lot of work done in the new.
True. Oh,
it
God,
disappointed me, because she would look great, I thought. And
I
saw
agree.
her in the
No, and if you
second
go
one, and
back,
I'm like, my God, what did she do to her face?
yeah, if you go back to the first Greek Wedding, it's before she had all of her work done.
She looks
now it's
terrific. I don't get it.
I don't know either. I hear
sometimes it changes the entire shape of their face, and it's too distracting now, where you can't even really tell it's them anymore.
I'm sure I've told you before, Rita Moreno, I met her in 1982.
Yeah.
And she kissed me, I was 17. I was actually cute back then. And that was a great thrill, because I remember her as the stripper in Marlowe, the James Garner, Philip Marlowe movie.
Oh, sure. Yeah. It's weird, because I only remember her from Sesame Street and West Side Story. You can't get more polar opposite than West Side Story
and the Electric Company.
And the Electric Company.
Yeah. Hey, you guys. That's hilarious.
That's right.
No, she was on again later after the Marlowe movie. She was a recurring character on Rockford Files, and she's an ex-hooker that, if she had her way, she would have married Rockford. And Rockford is always good to her and stuff, but he keeps her at arm's length. It's like, I'm
That's
here.
Right.
But
James Garner, sure. My God, see, when in The Great Escape, he was always, he plays.
Oh my God. Absolutely, man.
He plays the what is it? What do they call him? The scrounger.
Right. Headley.
Scrounger in The Great Escape.
Yeah, and Donald Pleasance is his wingman.
That's right.
Great movie. I love that.
Every time I see him in Halloween, I'm like, hey, there's the guy that Rockford has to take with him in The Great Escape.
The Forger, Blythe.
The Forger. That's it. You can't see his hand in front of his face. And that was another one of those, like Mad World, where it was on WGN, or it was a two-nighter. You couldn't get The Great Escape in one night. In Mad World, you weren't going to get in one night, or you weren't going to get up for school the next day, because you had to stay up, and you fell asleep because it was on until 1. With CBS, late show, whatever, you were going to get so many commercials that the damn thing was going to be on until 2 a.m.
It was one of my favorite bonding moments with my father. He saw in the paper that Anatomy of a Murder was going to be on at like 2 a.m. And he's like, will you stay up with me and watch it? I'm like, yes. We watched on a Friday night, and he was so thrilled, because he's like, rape is like the big subject of this movie. He goes, this movie was banned in American cities in the late 50s.
Yeah.
That's how like controversial it was. And he goes, my God, now it's like, any police procedural.
Did you make it, or did you fall asleep, or did you?
No, I stayed up with him. He was so excited to watch it. And the other movie that we bonded over, because it reminded him of his days in the Army. He was an MP after World War II in the occupation, and he was in Vienna. So The Third Man. He's like, you want to know what I did during he goes, not technically the war, but when I was in the Army? And he goes, well, watch this. And it was, oh my God. And he goes, yeah, I was one of these MPs running around for the black marketeers and stuff. And I'm like, blown away. I'm like, Jesus, that's what my dad did. That's amazing.
Yeah. You'd be surprised sometimes when you ask them. It was like, there were relatives I had that, during the Second World War, they were here. They kept them stateside, because there was such a manpower shortage. They brought a lot of Italian POWs to like central U.S., like Kansas, and places to work and factories and things like that, or agricultural jobs that they had. They couldn't speak the language, so there are U.S. servicemen. If you could speak Italian, they would keep you here to handle the POWs. So I had relatives that did that, and a lot of the Italian guys were like, didn't want to go back because of how easy it was here, and how poor they were in Italy. So
wow, Savalas during World War II and post World War II was very big in the military on the propaganda side, because he could speak a bunch of different languages. and was
He
like,
was a correspondent too, wasn't he? A war
yes, he was.
correspondent?
Yes, he was.
I remember seeing an interview where he said that, and I was like, wow, it was.
Oh yeah.
I just remember him doing those Gold Key Club member, commercials, at the
Hey, baby. Yeah.
right
Players Club.
right during the midnight special when we watched Midnight Special, on Friday, see what band was coming out. I was in Telly Savalas with with Black Velvet at the Bryn Mawr L stop. They had the Black Velvet Telly Savalas as where he was pimping the vodka, the scotch or whiskey, whatever the hell Black Velvet was back.
You gotta watch. They're on there. You can find it on YouTube. And I actually played it when we did an Yeah panel at C2E2 one time. His version of the song by Bread, If a Man Could Be in Two Places at One Time.
That's right. I forgot he did albums. Yeah.
It's fantastic. And he's smoking throughout
yeah.
That and Battle of the Network Stars.
Sure.
And they had the relay race, and everybody thought that ABC cheated. And it was Ron Howard and Gabe Kaplan, and Robert Conrad was the captain of NBC, and he's yelling in protest. And Telly was the captain of CBS. He's in a tracksuit, smoking a cigarette, talking to Howard Cosell. Howard, this is completely unfair. It should be all three teams. And it ended.
I remember one of the scenes in Battle of the Network Stars where he's in a hot tub. They cut to him and he's in a hot tub smoking, having a drink. Like he's talking, and they called him up, and it was like they made it seem like CBS called him and told him they needed him to run the team. And I'm like, oh my God, that's just perfect Telly Savalas.
Those were the best, man. And that scene I was describing, it culminated in a 50-yard dash between Robert Conrad and Gabe Kaplan.
That's right.
Gabe Kaplan had the giant fro, and when he's running, he's like a comet with a tail.
Yeah.
How
the hell? And then I think he beat Bob Conrad too, didn't he? Which you didn't expect. You thought for sure Bob Conrad was.
He was like 15 years younger than Conrad. Conrad was already like, if not 50, in his late 40s. I mean, in amazing shape.
Yeah.
But still, Gabe.
But like 3 feet tall too. So
Yeah.
But all I remember about that too was you got to see Linda Carter in a one piece. That was
Linda Carter, Adrienne Barbeau, Cheryl Ladd.
Yeah.
In their primes. Their primes, yes.
Linda Carter in a one-piece running around when she's excited. That you want to see, And I was just like, my God, as a kid, you're like, wait a minute, that's Wonder Woman, in a bathing suit. But I remember her in the Vegas Strangler episodes from Starsky and Hutch, where she plays one of the strippers. So I was just like, I knew you spotted her right away. You're like, wow, that's Linda Carter,
And man, in her 70s or however old she is, she's still amazing looking.
Yeah. I haven't seen her in shows in a while, but I think occasionally she pops up at a show.
Yeah, she does. No, absolutely.
Yeah.
Sally, you're killing me. I'll let you go. We did good here.
Hey, John, I always appreciate you having me on. Everybody that it was great to see everybody at New York. And coming out of COVID, I'm glad. I don't take it for granted, John. I was smoking cigars in my garage for 2 years with that COVID.
I know.
My kids were home with the remote learning, man. It was like I was like Papillon, how do I look? I'd stick my head out of it. Yeah. It was bad. So to be able to go back to these things, and even though, it's post-COVID, I won't lie, it's different, in the publishing business is different. In comics, as we all know, DC is kind of chaotic right now, and Marvel it's different at Marvel right now, and the independent comic scene is up for grabs, so to speak, with the whole new distributorship and all that. But at the end of the day, what are you going to do?
Just keep making great stuff.
You got it's like you got to be like the wildebeest on the Serengeti, man. You got to just keep running.
I don't know what your schedule's like, but Mitch says bring Sal to Terrificon. He can walk around Mohegan Sun like.
Yeah, I've been hearing about Terrificon a lot, and it sounds great. The problem is just a lot of these shows just I can't do as many as I used to because of the family. I got 2 teenagers now, which is a cosmic joke with me with 2 teenagers because I was like a tremendous pain in the ass when I was a teenager. So I got good kids. I can't complain, but I compare what they do to what I used to do. So I'm expecting them to, light shit on fire and and yell Attica, start screaming Attica in the playground, when the teacher takes them to the office. So,
well, if you're able to make it, Terrificon is as Mitch says, the 16th through the 18th next
you
year.
do it now. Are you doing any shows this year, John, or
I'm not doing any more in 24 and 23.
yeah?
I'll be at Terrificon. I'm not going to be at Fan Expo Chicago. It's the same weekend as Terrificon. I'm just sorry, Fan Expo. I like Mitch's show better. I really do.
I look forward. I look forward to. Well, it's hard because I do it like 3. I plan San Diego and then New York and then Luca. Like I said, it's been weird. I haven't done it in a long time because of COVID. But it's the season's over for me after Luca. That's it. And I really like Thanksgiving more than Christmas because it's more mellow. It's just one. It's the Thursday and you get together with the family. It's not the whole season of chaos and traffic and bullshit and all that. So I like Thanksgiving. Just to chill and the weather's still. But then that's it. No shows until.
I forgot. I'm doing in mid-March. I'm doing Dublin Comic-Con in Ireland.
Hey, there you go.
Blew my mind.
Awesome.
They invited me. They're flying me out. They're putting me up.
That's fantastic.
I'm shocked.
Wow. When is that now?
Mid-March.
Wow, that's fantastic.
And I might have another out-of-town show, but I won't announce anything until it's set. But yeah, no, at C2E2 Terrificon.
Dublin, yeah. I'm a big fan of Guinness. So whatever.
I can't wait. No, Owen McCauley, one of the organizers, has been great to me, and in fact, I'm even going to do a Zoom interview for a Dublin library show next month in November. Yeah. So, what else can I say?
Wow,
but
Dublin.
yeah.
Oh, that's great.
No,
that's a lot of travel, though, man. I mean, it ain't as easy as it used to be, John. I mean,
No, I hear you, man. No, it's like a 7-hour flight or whatever. I hear you.
You get your ass kicked with the flights. I'm telling you. I mean, it was exciting, and you're traveling, and oh my God, you feel like you're in a Brute commercial from the 70s where you're through airports, and you're the man with the high karate. Yeah, you're playing high karate, and now you get there and you're just like, I just want to get there. And then I want to get back, and you want to get, and you're tired, and there's the jet lag, and there's the bullshit, and like I said, I love Luca, but it's the travel part. When I get there, you got to stay up a whole day so that your clock is all 8 hours ahead.
Yeah.
So and then you're eating unpasteurized dairy, and you got to hope you don't get sick. So and you're shitting tax, if you got problems. So. Shit you never worried about when you were younger.
I understand.
Never.
No, I know. I'm looking forward to it. But no, I hear you. God, we're old enough that we remember when you used to fly in planes when you were a little kid. And I don't know when your first plane air travel was.
College.
But
college.
It was college. Okay, because I remember in the 70s a couple trips that I took with the parents. They put you in a suit. You were in the jumbo jet. And everything, and they had the lounge upstairs, with the piano and everything on the
you
plane.
could smoke.
Yes, and now it's a flying bus.
Yes, you got a lot now. Well, you gotta. That's why I won't fly Southwest, because I did my dues. I paid my dues. I went to a lot of shows, but the problem with Southwest is you get a lot of guys that I just want to get there. It's not a party. I don't want to bring on. I don't show up drunk. I don't. You got to sit next to the guy with cut off sweatpants and a boner, and he's got black cocktail socks, and he's got a garbage bag for luggage.
Yep.
And here he comes walking down the aisle with a chicken, and I'm like, guys, I just want to get there.
Chicken.
And the guy in front of you reclines, and he's got his head in your lap like you're a dentist.
Yep.
I'm like, I can't do that shit anymore. If I can't afford it, John, I stay home. It's real simple.
No, I hear you. I
cannot go like the Greyhound of the airlines anymore. It's just I can't do that shit anymore.
No,
when you're young, you do all that shit. You sleep on floors, and you eat whatever. And I used to go to San Diego and live on trail mix and whatever. And
sleep in a bathtub.
Yeah, you sleep in bathtubs, and you don't even think twice. And then as you get old, you don't even change your clothes for Christ's sake, and you're drinking Lavoris and all kinds of sick shit. Not anymore, man. I'm like, I gotta get there in one piece.
We're like Danny Glover in the Lethal Weapon movies. We're getting too old for this shit. I hear you, man.
Yeah, no. I'm like the guys in Cocoon at this point. Forget about Danny Glover. At least Danny Glover's got a gun. I'm like, yeah. I'm like, what's his name with the mustache?
Don Amici.
Yeah, I'm Don Amici for sure. Because I'm just kind of like, my wife always asks me for holidays what I want. I'm like, I just want to be left alone and to be able to sit here and have nobody fuck with me. That's all I want. It doesn't sound like a lot, but it's a lot. Holidays come and I just want, to take it easy.
Well, good luck at Luca.
Thank you.
I hope everything goes well. Can people still get Hostage and the Atomic?
Yeah, it's at mercurycomics.net. Twitter's Mercury Comics or Sal Abbinanti on Instagram. I'm like a $2 hooker at a naval base, John. I'm everywhere. So you get a hold of me on Facebook, on Instagram, on Twitter. I do all that stuff for Mercury and for myself and for, Alex Ross and Bill Sienkiewicz, because those guys aren't popular enough. They need me to help them get the word out. Nobody knows who Alex and Bill are. So,
No, I never heard of them. Absolutely.
Never heard of them.
No. Sally, as always, I appreciate the conversation.
John,
I know it, and I love you.
Appreciate it. I really appreciate it. It's always great. Anytime you want me on, just give me a holler.
Well, and I do, and you always come, and I mean, it means a lot to me. So thank you. Tomorrow night, everybody, Matt Wagner and Kelly Jones.
Wow, very
nice. They're finally.
I'm like Charles Nelson Riley warming up for those two guys. Are you kidding? I mean, it's like,
well, you got a solo talk, and I've talked to them a million times, but I'm very excited. They're doing a Dracula original graphic novel. They're crowdfunding it.
Wow,
the campaign starts tomorrow,
very
and they're two of my favorite people, and I can't wait to talk to them. Next Sunday, here's a good tease: Jeff Loeb coming up.
Wow.
And
Jeff's good people. Jeff's a real good guy. I got a chance to talk to him last couple of years because he's tight with people in the business with Simone and those guys. And such a nice guy. I mean,
absolutely, man.
Almost like too nice of a guy. You expect him to be more of an asshole because he's been around the business more, but he's such a sweet guy. You're kind of surprises you.
I really, sadly, I think, and I'll mention a couple other guests coming up. But I think after Sam, his son, passed away, I really think it mellowed him out. I really do.
Yeah, unfortunately, you would think that would, or you don't really have time for the bullshit. You kind of.
That's what I think happened. Yeah.
You don't really. You realize the guys we're not. It's what we're doing is it's a blessing to be able to do it as an art form and to do it as an artist, and you kind of you learn to let all the other small shit just kind of fall.
I hear you. My first meeting with him was in San Diego. He and Joe Casey were sitting in two overstuffed chairs at the Hyatt. And I forget who I was talking to. And Lo goes, "Hey, you're the voice." And I'm like, "Pardon me?" He goes, "Word Balloon, right?" And I'm like, "You know who I am?" He goes, "Oh, I love your shit." And I'm like, "Okay, great." And then Liefeld, too. That same night was like,
well, no, that's how I met you, John. You forget that I remember you from the Score. I mean, and I heard where were we? I think we were at Chicago, one of the Chicago shows or Challengers, maybe. I can't remember. We were something locally, and I'm like, I know that guy's voice because I used to listen to the Score every morning when I would draw, and I remember shaking. You used to play the carry, and they used to break your balls when you came on.
Oh yeah,
and I mean, it's like you can't. Duck that voice. It's a radio voice. You either got it or you ain't got it.
I guess.
You're like, you're like, Bill Curtis,
When I met Mark Millar, he's like, "Oh, John, I have to tell you, based on your voice, I was expecting a much younger man." He goes, "You kind of have a Walter Cronkite quality to your."
There you go, yeah. Oh, who passed away today was, I think, is it Harry Porterfield?
Yes.
Yeah.
Another Chicago broadcaster, wonderful,
man,
wonderful guy.
You grew up in Chicago, it was him and Curtis and John Drury and the guy from Channel 9. Now it's going to kill me. I forgot his name.
Jack Taylor, John Drury.
Jack.
Jack Taylor.
Jack Taylor. where he had
Oh, yeah.
he had the 9 and it wait up for night beat to see the Cubs.
Yeah, Marty McNeely on night. Or what I loved about channel WGN TV, Channel 9 here in Chicago, Ernie Banks, when he was still playing for the Cubs, would occasionally fill in and be the sportscaster. And sometimes he would show video of his own home runs and literally to be like, things look tough for the Cubs until the 7th inning when yours truly approached the plate. And then cut to a home run of Ernie Banks. And it's
and
like
then Len O'Connor.
Len O'Connor, the political commentator.
My father's line was, the only thing I can understand is when he says his name. That's all he understood.
Homo Giancana and the Chicago mob are taking over, and I am Len O'Connor.
You couldn't understand anything because he would talk in such a droning way. You had him, and then I used to love Johnny Morris, on Channel.
Johnny's still with us. Johnny's amazing.
Yeah, no, you got to see the clip when the hot mic when Ditka's yelling at him, and Johnny doesn't pull back, man. He hands it back to him.
It's on YouTube, everybody, and it's after a Bears loss.
Yes,
and it's all this raw footage of Johnny Moore's former Bear, local CBS sportscaster, waiting to get an interview with Ditka, and he gets the word from the truck, Ditka's not going to do it, and he is pissed, and he's God damn it, and just because they were old teammates, so he didn't coach, bow to the
and Ditka's in his underwear because you could see him in the chair from the waist down. He's still in his underwear.
Because he comes out and Ditka's red face. He's like, John, this is the last time I do this. And Morris, to his face, like, hey, fuck you. You've got a contract. You've got to do this. So don't give me your bullshit. And it was so great because truly it's like, oh my God, it's Ditka, not Johnny Morris. It's like, fuck you, pal. I've known you.
No, and Ditka, and everybody knew Ditka was always a crazy old bastard anyway. So it wasn't, but it's great to see Johnny Morris. He's like, hey man, this is what we're doing. I don't want to be here either.
That's the thing. Exactly. Literally. Exactly. It's like, you think I like this? And it's so funny. Oh my God, it's truly one of my favorite things. And we had a VHS of it at the Score. We would just cry laughing at that. Yeah. And
you guys used to play that. You used to play the Ray Knight when Ray Knight's yelling at the reporter, and you used to play the Lee Elia. Lee Elia's in the Hall of Fame. That's got to go in the broadcast Hall of Fame. The Lee Elia.
My dear departed friend Les Grobstein was there to get all that recorded.
Les Grobstein.
He's the one who recorded it all.
Thank God he hung on to that tape.
And he had Tony Phillips. Jay Mariotti was threatening Tony Phillips, and Tony Phillips like, I'm not going to touch you because you'll sue me. So keep yelling at me and stuff. And Jay Mariotti's just livid at him and totally trying to bait him to hit him and stuff. And he's like, I'm not going to do it, man. I know you're a piece of shit, but I'm not going to raise my hand. Fantastic.
But the Tommy Lasorda one is great too.
When Dave Kingman hit 4 home runs.
Dave Kingman hit 4 home runs. Yeah.
What'd you think of Kingman's performance? The fuck do you think I thought of it?
and you can hear the guy vacuuming in the background. That's my favorite part. The janitor's vacuuming and Lasorda's losing his mind.
And he just keeps saying, Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
Jesus Christ.
I never realized there's a lot of great Lasorda ones on YouTube where I never realized how much he went off. I mean, or the way he would talk to pitchers.
He came to the Score whenever he was in town, and he was always just classic. Another guy like that, Earl Weaver. Yeah. And actually, Sparky Anderson.
Sparky Anderson.
There's a thing where he's in a restaurant and a reporter's like, hey, I'm sorry of whatever I said to you earlier today or whatever. And Sparky goes, I've always been fair to you cocksuckers. It's like, okay, Sparky, if you say so. Yeah. Oh my God. Seriously, man. Best 10 years of my broadcast career was at the Score.
Yeah.
And just meeting all these athletes and coaches and managers and other reporters and stuff. And it was a locker room wall to wall and just very funny locker room humor, and it was fantastic.
Well, I don't think you could get away with that with social media. The stuff that would go on after the game. I mean, I was a bartender during those years, and I remember when Eckersley was with the Cubs. I mean, we used to have to put that guy in a cab because he was such a drunk. And then when he went to the A's, he became a Hall of Famer. But when he was a day-to-day, on the Cubs, he was a degenerate, man. I mean, like. And it was a lot of guys like that. Eddie Belfour, when he was a goalie with the Hawks, was the same way. He was a notorious.
Chelios would get out of control.
Yeah. No, I mean, these guys do real stories about, and with social media, you could never get away with that today.
No. Well, hey, man, unfortunately, some of my friends, I'll tell you off the air, but no, they thought it was still the old days and they got let go. Wow. That's what happened. Yeah. Absolutely, man.
I hop in and out of the Score now, and it's a shell of what it was. I mean, I'm sorry. It's just kind of like it's a neutered version. There's no personality. There's really no soul to it. It doesn't really have. That's what it really, for me, John, the swan song of the Score, after you, after Mike North, after Jiggets, but when OB and Doug Buffon went, that was the end of it.
I agree.
They're after the Bears games show was the classic of, it was the old guys, the old Bears, and that guard is gone. That generation is gone now.
I know.
And those guys used to be, that was it. That was the last gasp of the Score in my mind.
I agree with you. I absolutely agree with you.
When you replace Doug Buffon and OB with Lawrence Holmes and what's his face?
Larry's a
Bernstein. With Bernstein. Yeah, forget about it. It's over.
Yeah, they're nice guys, but I hear you, man. No, you needed the old guys that really knew what it was all about. And oh my God, OB would just bust a blood vessel.
Oh,
anytime.
God.
I mean, my God, he'd be livid right now doing Bears post games and stuff. And same with Dougie, same with Buffon.
Dougie would tell you great stories. He would talk about Butkus. He would talk about, and these guys now, they want to talk about when I was a kid growing up and during the Michael Jordan era. I'm like, you were a kid during the Michael Jordan era. I used to love your guys used to talk shit about the coach of the Bulls.
Phil Jackson.
He used to talk shit about Phil Jackson.
Boers and Dan McNeil called him Big Chief Triangle.
Dan McNeil used to, and Boers and McNeil. You know who else they hated? They hated the guy who coaches Denver now. He was the coach of the Saints, and Sean Payton was another one that Boers and them said, you behind the scenes, that guy's the biggest piece of shit you've ever met. And said the same thing about Big Chief Triangle.
Yeah, Phil. Yeah.
About what a piece of shit he was, and he thought he invented the basketball and blah, blah, blah. And you love that because these guys had opinions about these guys.
And it was during the Bulls 6 championship.
During the 6
and they're the only two guys in Chicago. Like, I'm not impressed.
Right. And he would talk shit about no tipping Pippen, what a cheapskate Scottie Pippen was. And
sad but true.
And it was like now it's like these guys walk on water. They're afraid to say anything. And Mike North was the same way. I mean, look, people have their opinions. You don't always agree with opinions, but it's like when you got a family and people talk shit, that's what's great about having people's opinions. People have flaws. They're not perfect. You don't agree with them all the time. But it's entertaining as shit versus guys that just agree with everything you say.
100%. 100%, Sal. No, you're right, man. No, again, the best 10 years.
How is Dan Jiggets? He's
doing okay. He had a little health scare a couple of years ago, but he's doing all right. His daughter, Lauren.
His daughter's on Channel 9.
Incredible reporter. And it's great because I remember when she was a little kid.
She looks great on there. I mean, I'm
but
sure
real polished. Yeah. Tremendous local reporter. Yeah. And Walter Payton's kids, Brittany and
Jared Payton. I like him a lot. He's a very likable guy, and anything that's going to follow the legacy of sweetness is like everybody in town is rooting for him.
Absolutely, and same with Brittany, his sister.
Yeah,
she had a Chicago food show for a while.
Yeah, I don't think she's in town anymore. I think she left town.
That makes sense because I thought she was great when she was in town. No, they're good kids, and again, I wish them well. And same with Lauren Jiggets, absolutely. Sal, I can't believe my first year at the Score was literally 31 years ago. 92.
Yeah, wow. That's 92. Crazy. I used to listen to you guys every morning, man. I'd have it on the radio while I was working, and it was, it was a great show, man. It really was a piece of like Chicago radio history, that era, that little clip in time, and now it's there, but it's not the same. And it's not just because we're older. It just really was not the same.
No, and a lot of the guys that are on the Score and ESPN now, they are more Sports Center descendants than Score descendants. Since the Score always maintained that vibe when I was there
Yeah.
of the local bar. And I mean, that's like,
Well, and
we
it's
had all these
also, you
print
guys were
guys.
kind of, the genre hadn't really been defined yet. You guys were just kind of defining it as you were going along.
That's
It
right.
wasn't, you didn't have a template to work off of like
Nope.
they do now. So you
Nope.
were just kind of, and everybody, it was like the Wild West. You know,
Absolutely.
everybody was just kind of going, okay, let's see if this works. Wow, that's great. Well, that didn't work. Let's do this. And then, I mean, I don't know what the numbers were like, but I'm sure the advertisers, you might have had some problems here and there when you had a wrinkle going on, or somebody said something that pissed somebody off or whatever,
Well,
But,
we had the
but
right.
that's what radio was,
Absolutely. And no, you're right, man. I mean, again, I came with, a very small bit of boxing knowledge, but my strength was doing comedy. I would do voices, I would do parody songs, I would do sketches. And I'm like, unheard of on a sports station, because everyone else went by the book ESPN sort of vibe of Sports Center rather than be the entertainers. And we all tried to be.
Yeah.
And we had a blast. And you're right. I always said the inmates ran the asylum. And even the lowly producers could get in the managers' faces and go, no, you're wrong. And this is why you're wrong. And it's like, because we have the example of the hosts. And Ron Gleason, the program director, I always say he was one of the best bosses I ever had, because he'd let you blow off steam. And he would win an argument at the end of the day, but he at least would hear you out.
Right.
And sometimes you won, and all right, I didn't think of it that way. I mean, again, he was like expecting a by the book radio station.
Yeah.
And we all were nuts. We all were crazy. We shot from the hip. We weren't afraid. This was when the Blackhawks were not on regular TV.
And we had dollar bill words back then,
Yep, dollar bill words, absolutely. Those were
all right, John.
Sal, it means a lot that you remember those days, and I appreciate it.
It was fantastic. It really is. There's a great documentary there, man. It really is. There's a great film there. I mean, that's like,
I keep saying the same thing. Absolutely.
It really is.
Well, thank you. Thank you, everybody, for watching. Again, join us tomorrow night. Matt Wagner, Kelly Jones, and myself will have a great conversation. I hope you can join us. Until then, stay safe, stay happy, stay healthy.